Do you ever get fed up with the low standards everyone settles for? In 1429, Charles, the Prince of France, was having a hard time not only fighting the English, but also living at peace with his own family, who were French royalty. His mom had all but disowned him, and what military forces he had to protect himself and rescue France from the English were being defeated in battle by his fellow Frenchmen, the House of Burgundy. Charles was in a difficult spot. He was planning to flee from France. A young 17-year-old girl arrived from the village of Domremy and announced that she had been sent with a divine mission to lift the siege of Orleans and retake the city of Reims, where Charles was to be crowned King of France. The prince was not sure what to do about this, so he sent the illiterate country girl to Poitiers so the church could assess how true her claims were. The church council, made up of 18 people, told the girl, "God cannot wish us to believe in you unless he sends us a sign to show that we should believe in you. We cannot advise the king to entrust you with soldiers whom you would run into danger merely on your bare assertion. Have you nothing more to say?" The young woman responded, "I have not come to Poitiers to make signs, but lead me to Orleans and I will show you the signs I was sent to make." If you think of a spectrum between passive and active, the council at Poitiers was so far on the passive side that they wouldn't decide anything until it was shoved in their face. And on the other side of the spectrum was Joan, who wanted to establish the truth by acting truly. Here's another example of this. Joan noted that when it came time to scale the walls of a fortress, she was the first to put her ladder against the wall. She wasn't waving her finger in the air to see how things were going to look first. Kierkegaard said, "Everyone loves a heroic figure after they're gone." While people praised Joan's ideals and insistence on morals, few would be able to stand her for this. Well, not in modern times anyway. Joan was such an individual who went off the beaten path that we are going to do something a little different today. Instead of evaluating her to see if she measured up to being an existential hero, I am going to pronounce her an existential hero from the beginning of the video. And then we can dig into the details of her story to absorb everything we can understand about what set Joan of Arc apart as an... Ain't it weird that we consider a person to be an existentialist based on what they wrote? I'm not saying these guys did nothing. Some of them certainly did. You can, of course, write about a lot of things that don't exist at all. Consider something Kierkegaard wrote in his journal when he was still young and wondering about what he was going to do with his life. Some people said that what made Kierkegaard different from every philosopher who came before him is that earlier philosophers emphasized what they knew, but Kierkegaard emphasized what must be done. This reminds me of another explosive thing Joan said to one of her messengers. They told her one day, "The council does not think it needful for the soldiers to sally forth tomorrow." Joan replied, "You have been to your council, and I to mine, and believe me, the counsel of my lord will be put into effect, and will endure while your counsel will perish." Keep in mind that Joan is talking to people who appeared to be on the same team. Other than comic books, anime, or the Bible, the number of people I have ever heard talking this way is a very low number. If there's one thing that is consistent about the life of Joan of Arc, it's that people were constantly approaching her and saying things like, "Oh, Joan, we know that everything you say is awesome and all that junk, but there are these little details here why we can't do this." And then every time Joan would invoke the name of God and bring her audience into confrontation with the greatness she had committed to. In some ways, it's like what she was making war against was all the pathetic excuses people used to insulate themselves from life. It's worth noting here that Joan, as a military strategist, preferred to be on the offense rather than the defense, a tendency that came more into vogue during the mid to late 20th century. ChatGPT seems to agree with me on this for whatever it's worth. On its own, I don't know how much that says about how existential someone is, but in her case, I think it says something about how much she leaned into living her life. Many of you have picked up on how I have a sophisticated way of telling which person to review next. I asked one of my superfans who I should make a video about, and she asked me to do Joan of Arc. Joan was already on my list. I was curious to see what she liked about Joan, if she was focused on the inspirational power of her, or just her demographics. And she said, Joan took action, Joan used her authority with the troops to get them to behave well, Joan didn't give up. So, existential, existential, existential. When the voices first came to Joan while she was working in her garden, they had a very simple message: be good and go to church. Joan's family later reported about her that she worked very diligently, was frequently in prayer, and often found giving to the poor. She made mistakes and confessed them during confession, but her service to God was a 24/7 undertaking. Existentially, Joan was very different from a person who was led from one appetite to another, or very different from saying one thing and then doing the opposite. Here in the modern world, we tend to define everything and everyone in terms of how they can be labeled, often without mentioning anything the person actually chose. You can look at these demographics or essences all day long without ever seeing the person or their greatness underneath. The Prince's War Council was constantly trying to sideline Joan or diplomacy away all the gains Joan had made from her battles. One time they decided to attack without listening to the divine guidance Joan was hearing and suffered a defeat for it. When Joan confronted the War Council, she said, "You thought you had deceived me, but it is you who have deceived yourself." This reminds me of a passage Dostoevsky wrote saying, "The main thing is to shun lies, all forms of lies, lies to yourself in particular." So be honest with yourself. You'll feel less conflicted, and you might succeed on the battlefield as well. Did he really just blow a trumpet for dread? Yes, he did. Since existentialism split into both atheist and theist branches, I can't point to Joan's relationship with God as evidence that she was an existential hero, however long the list of supernatural events surrounding her life were, and however much the historians attest to them. But regardless of how you went to explain these seemingly miraculous events surrounding her life, it filled people with dread. And this brings me to a question I have wondered for a long time. Why is it that when people see angels, they are terrified? Is it because the angels look scary? Like the light from them is going to radiate the world away? Or are people afraid because of the implications? If there's angels, maybe I have to answer for the moral failures in my life. I don't know, but what I can tell you is that when people saw the supernatural in Joan's life, they were shocked and afraid. Here's another example. At her trial, Joan warned her accusers, saying, "You say that you are my judge. Take care what you are doing, for in truth I have been sent by God, and you put yourself in great danger." In some ways, dread is fear on another level. It is confronting the options you have, realizing they won't decide for you. Consider that Joan announced that any soldier found with a woman selling her body would be forced to marry her. This isn't the kind of Halloween scary, but a scary that brings people to terms with themselves. That's how an existential hero must bring people into confrontation with their own lives, which Joan did. The ancient Greek word for choice might surprise you: crisis. The thinking is, if your life is on fire and you can only get one thing out of it before it all burns down, what are you going to choose? Joan brought crisis not only to the English people fleeing from her, but also to her fellow soldiers and Frenchmen. There's a ton of amazing stories about Joan that I'm not mentioning because I'm not sure what was existential about them. But her life was full of wonder, and you should all go out and read about her inspiring life. You might not hear voices from Margaret and Catherine and Michael. You might not kick the invaders out of your homeland, but Joan can teach you a thing or two about what it means to become yourself. And that is why, even though I am not qualified to evaluate the life of Joan, I hereby pronounce her now and forever an S-tier existential hero. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you think I rated her too high.